I'm Courtney Smith.
And I'm Elise Sharp.
And we are two nerds who are here to make Shakespeare easier to understand.
In this podcast, we will explore as many dimensions to Shakespeare's plays as we can by looking at the text, examining the historical context in which the plays were written, and how his plays are viewed through modern lenses of feminism, racism, classism, colonialism, nationalism, ableism, all of the isms.
We will discuss how his plays shaped both the past and present, and, as theater makers, how his plays can be responsibly performed today, all while trying our best to approach his works without giving in to Bardolatry.
So, Shakespeare, anyone?
Hi, listeners. Want to support Shakespeare Anyone? Visit shakespeareanyone.com/support or check out the links in our episode description. Now, onto the episode.
Hi, Courtney.
Hi, Elise. How's it going?
It's going pretty well. How are you?
I'm doing well as well. I always love saying that. I'm doing well as well. I'm also doing well.
Yeah. I'm super excited today because we are talking to Anna Davis, who is a debut author who has written a young adult dark fantasy retelling of Macbeth. And you and I have read it.
Yeah, we were given the opportunity to read an advanced reader copy of it. So thank you so much, Anna, for providing us this opportunity.
Yes, the novel is out now. And if you are interested after hearing our audio, we will link in our bookshop.org storefront, and purchasing through there will support the podcast as well as Anna's debut novel. And the book is so instantly grabs you and takes you on this really fantastic journey.
Yeah, as a Shakespeare girly, as a YA girly, I had a great time reading it. It's a sit down and you don't even realize the time is flying while you're reading it kind of read.
Yeah. Here's a little bit more about Anna and her book, My Keen Knife.
Anna Davis is a fantasy writer and currently pursuing dual master's degrees in what amounts to human rights and international conflict. The actual names are a mouthful. She recently graduated from Northwestern University with a bachelor's degree in international affairs. Anna was a mentee for round 9 of Author Mentor Match, and she remains far too invested in the book she read in high school English class.
My Keen Knife is a stunning, innovative retelling of Shakespeare's Macbeth set in a Portugal-inspired country where 3 teenagers will stop at nothing to fulfill their destinies. All hail Malves, who shall wear crowns. On the night of her brother's murder, Adelina Malves holds him as he dies, inheriting both his title and the prophecy that spelled out his doom. Hail, thou shalt get kings, though thou be none. Ghost-whispering Jasibin holds the key to Adelina's plan to contact her dead brother, if only his strange magic wasn't killing him slowly. All hail Sebastião, that shall be king hereafter. When a witch sees the riches of a king in his future, Adelina's offer of coin in exchange for help feels like fate, pulling Seba into a fake dating plot with Adelina that hides their sinister plans. To claim the crown, Adelina, Seba, and Jasibin must learn to be a little wicked, even if it means betraying each other. My Keen Knife is out now wherever you get your books. And if you would like to support the podcast and Anna Davis's debut novel, you can find a link to purchase the book in our episode description. Hi, Anna.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Of course. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for sharing your debut novel, My Keen Knife, with our listeners. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm excited that it's getting into fall weather. I'm very excited about that. I got to wear a sweater today, so it's looking good.
So jealous. I'm over in LA where it looks like it's summertime still, so I'm envious of your autumnal joy.
It's also perfect weather for a fantasy kind of spooky novel to debut. But before we get into talking more about your book, we got to ask, what was your first experience with Shakespeare?
Yes, so I'm very excited about this question because I get to brag about the fact that I'm from Maryland and we have a great Renaissance festival. The Maryland Renaissance Festival is wonderful. Maryland is very into, I don't know, our state sport is jousting. That's a fun fact about Maryland. So I think my first experience with Shakespeare was probably somewhere around Renaissance Festival time because my parents would bring my sister and I pretty much every year, and they always have some kind of Shakespeare production type thing going on at least one of the stages. I think they have a stage that's like pretty dedicated to Shakespeare every single year. So the last couple of years it's been Macbeth, but I don't remember if that's what it was when I was younger as well. So I don't know if this is just like a coincidence or if it like was in my subconscious, but I think that would have been my first experience with Shakespeare. I'm not sure if I have like specific memories of it, but I'm pretty sure it would be that. But then of course like, seventh grade English, got to read Romeo and Juliet, and then like pretty much every year after that in English class, reading some amount of Shakespeare.
I love that one, there's maybe this like possibility that it embedded very deeply in your subconscious very early on.
Yeah. As a 3-year-old, it's like getting those witches, Macbeth in there. Yeah. Got to get it young.
Yeah. And then I also love that like it's something that you then encountered as literature in school, like sort of the age where people start reading young adult fiction. And here you are with a young adult fantasy novel. So your debut novel, My Keen Knife, was just released on October 14th, about a week ago when this podcast airs. What inspired you to write this young adult dark fantasy retelling of Shakespeare's Macbeth?
Yeah, so a lot of different things kind of came together for it, but possibly the first thing that I had about it was just like this kind of Portugal-inspired setting. I'm half Portuguese and like very lucky growing up to be able to visit my family in Portugal. So like I kind of grew up being able to like go to castles and stuff in the summer. And just like that kind of thing. So I always had in the back of my mind that like Portugal would be a great fantasy setting. I was like, this is amazing. Why is no one doing this? So because I also like I enjoyed writing from a very young age. So it was just like kind of always, I think a lot of people who either write or have something other creative going on, like very young, like you kind of get used to just like having stuff in the back of your head, like, yeah, one day, one day, no one's gonna see it coming. But so I had that in the back of my mind for a long time. And then probably the first thing that was more specific, I guess, to the actual story and it actually being like Macbeth in this kind of dark fantasy was actually the character of Jas. So still not Macbeth. So the character of Jas, he is one of the 3 POV characters. And he has kind of this mysterious ability to communicate with ghosts. And I was just always very interested in like that kind of archetype or trope of a character having some kind of relationship with death or just like the supernatural. And then like also all these kind of existential questions that come up about like what does being human look like and what is a monster and like all of those questions. So he was also kind of in the back of my head. And then COVID happened. And so during like the summer of 2020, the British National Theatre were putting up like professionally filmed productions for like a week at a time just on YouTube. And one of them was Macbeth. And so I watched it because also I had really liked Macbeth when like we had to read it in school and I had a really great teacher who like spent like a huge amount of time on it and was like very intent on having us think critically about it. So I already liked Macbeth. So then I watched Macbeth and I was like, oh, it's all coming together. And I think like specifically like just the character of Lady Macbeth and like the complexity of her violence and her ambition and her morals I thought was very interesting. And then, like what would she be like as a teenage girl? And I think also the YA aspect of it came because I was 18 in 2020. So that was very much like the stuff that I was reading. And that's also the age that I was. So I was also just very interested in writing like the kind of book that I wanted to read at that time. So yeah, so then it all just kind of it came together and then many iterations later became what it is now in 2025, 5 years later.
I was wondering which came first, the dark fantasy YA novel idea or the idea of retelling Macbeth. And it sounds like they sort of all kind of came bubbling to the surface and wove together around the same moment, which is very, very cool.
Yeah, it was definitely just came together at an interesting time. And yeah, I think a lot of it was also just like, yeah, I was like, those were the books that I was reading. That's what I was into. So I think if I was going to write something at that time, it was going to be some kind of dark fantasy But then also I don't think I realized like how dark it was or the way that it would be like categorized as dark until like we had to start like marketing, categorizing, like that kind of thing. And I was like, oh, it's dark. And like and like the list of content warnings was getting longer and longer. I was like,
Oh no, I wrote
I
that.
was like, oh, was that me?
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
love in the front where you're like in the acknowledgement, you're like, parents, this is just fiction.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, guys. Because also the first chapter is the main character deciding that she should kill her parents, and I was like, this is my parents should be forewarned that
Yeah,
this is not how I think about things.
yeah.
I love that you mentioned the first chapter because the first chapter really does. I feel like it's not a spoiler because it is the first chapter. And so it just sort of like grips you in this world where there are stakes for everybody and it's not like no one is safe. There's a mystery sort of at the center of this world. What is truth? What is really going on? As we've talked about, it is this Portugal-inspired country. Magic exists, but so does a sort of anti-magic prejudice. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you came up with the magic system within your story and the power struggle, pun totally intended, between magic users and the anti-magic elite?
Got to gear up for this.
Yeah, I know, that's a big one.
Yeah, so just kind of to give like a very broad overlook of like kind of what the magic system, or especially like what the kind of social fabric of this magic thing is. This Portugal-inspired country is called Jumaral, and everything is kind of connected to this religion of worshiping this ocean goddess. And so the belief is that magic is kind of just a part of everything, like it's just in the world around you. And that in itself is a gift from this ocean goddess. Like she gave us this magic. She's amazing. But then within this world, you have witches who are born with this natural ability to channel magic, and then alchemists who are kind of aiming to channel or harness this magic that's already in the world through ingredients, potions, and kind of science. And then there's just like normal people to get into like this anti-magic prejudice. Some of those normal people are bounty hunters who are paid to capture magic users and then turn them into the authorities where they are presumably killed. And we kind of find out more about like what that system is like throughout the book. So the reasoning given for like why magic is illegal and horrible is that magic is a gift from this ocean goddess and therefore magic users are thefts of her power. And there's like kind of a whole national myth and founding myth around this ocean goddess and why this magic is like so important that like normal people can't have this, like witches cannot have this. Yeah, and so there's a lot of layers, I guess, to why this kind of power struggle exists or why I created this power struggle. And part of it is just like it's interesting, you know, for plot, like it's an interesting dynamic to happen in the world. Another part of it is that this country, Jumaral, is going through this kind of industrialization process, but they are industrializing a lot slower than the other countries, than neighboring countries. So also for context, my like academic background is like international affairs, human rights, conflict studies, and all of the writing of this book took place while I was getting my bachelor's degree. So I think also like the two kind of like seeped into each other. Actually, my key knife did not seep into the other thing. We hope. But anyway, yeah, so Jumaral is industrializing, and something that is very common in a lot of countries that are going through a change or just where the people in power feel like they are losing power is that they start to target the people who they think are threatening them. So that can like come through like scapegoating, exploitation, many, many other forms of violence. And so kind of as like a reflection of that, the government of this fantasy country is targeting witches and magic users and also paying regular citizens. So that's also part of it, of like kind of turning people against these powerful individuals or these individuals that could be powerful or just like seen as a threat. And of course, this creates like a chilling effect on like witches, people who want to use magic, so they actually become worse at their magic because they don't want to practice it. There's not like a specific thing that I was drawing upon, but more of just like trends that we see in the world. But I think there's a lot of parallels just there in the way that cultures and traditions are erased, but also in the way that like education is linked to the way that governments and people in power and institutions in power kind of force their power onto people, especially when they feel threatened, and just kind of connecting to Portuguese history, but also, I mean, there's so many like today, like I think of like Afghanistan, Palestine, even like students in the US who are like having their education targeted or either directly or indirectly. And a lot of that is this way of like making sure that people don't have the resources to stand up for themselves or like be able to get out of the system that they're in. And then also just like with Portuguese history and the Portuguese dictatorship of the 20th century with really high like illiteracy rates amongst adults. So again, like people don't have the resources to respond. So also kind of drawing on that. So yeah, so there's just a lot of like that kind of like theft of power. And a lot of it is just like, you know, trying to other people. So also I think like if you look at just like the source text of Macbeth, like you kind of have this othering of the witches in terms of even just gender of like Macbeth and Banquo, they're basically like, what are you? Like, you look like women, but you have beards. And it is this like process of othering in this way. So like otherizing constructs this national narrative and a national founding myth, which all connects back to this ocean goddess, back to the fantasy, the power of this ocean goddess. And part of this founding myth is that the royal family is like chosen by the ocean goddess. So they have to make sure that the ocean goddess remains the most powerful so that they keep their legitimacy, so that their power doesn't slip. So therefore they target people who are now becoming more vulnerable because they are targeting them. So it's like all this cycle. So industrializing and magic and religion and this like powerful monarchy that like doesn't want to lose their power, and it's all Macbeth, so it's all like ambition and you're doing too much and like stepping on people. And so yeah, a lot of it coming together for that.
I'm so glad you like just unpacked a lot of it without giving away too much, like very, very well. Early on, and I was like, I gotta ask Anna about this. Like, there's some deep allegorical things that are happening in here that I'm pretty sure she's putting down. Speaking of things that you present, each chapter is presented from the point of view of one of your three main characters. You mentioned before there's three POV characters, Adelina, Jas, and Seba. Were there any moments in writing where it was either more difficult or easier to choose which point of view should present a specific moment in your plot?
I mean, I love like reading and writing multiple POV books because I love especially like, I mean, you get to see different sides of like what's going on, but also you get to see different sides of the characters. Like I love like writing and reading how characters see each other. I find that very interesting. Where it becomes difficult and easy in certain ways is I have three POV main characters. So when all three of them are together, then it becomes like a question of like, okay, who gets to tell this part? And there's a couple of scenes like about midway where I think I struggled with this a bit more of like who is going to tell this part because there's a lot of information that's coming out, but the characters all know different bits of it. And also the readers kind of know like some parts of it, or maybe have guessed some things. So it is like kind of a balance of trying to figure out what's going to like maybe still be like a little bit of a plot twist or a little surprise, but like not being like this came out of nowhere or the character telling this isn't the right person. Because sometimes I think as a reader, you can also be like, oh, but I want to know what they're thinking. Like, oh. So I think in general, for most chapters, it was kind of like or especially the chapters where they're all together, I would kind of decide like based on, and a lot of this was like me deciding and then also like with my agent, with editors, like we would sometimes talk about this, especially with my agent. They were very helpful in like, especially as we were doing big edits and like sometimes I would like be changing certain things and they would be like, no, you have to make sure that like this is said by this person. A lot of it is, yeah, based on like what that character knows, what the reader knows, and also what they can tell us about the other characters, because each of these three POVs is going to view each other in different ways. Mm-hmm. Like Adelina is very analytical, so she's just gonna be like, oh, well, this must mean this, blah, 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 blah. While Jas is more focused on like the emotions of the people around him. And Seba is just like, he's just self-obsessed. So you're probably not gonna get that much out of him if you want to know about other people. So that's also like part of the dynamic. when you have like the big kind of emotional moments or these big reveals or like whenever, because often when the three of them are together, there is some kind of like big reveal, big emotional thing happening. There's a part where like you see a big reveal about Seba's life through Jas's eyes. Like I think it hits in a certain way because they have such a close relationship. Like me as the writer and also as a reader when I'm reading other people's work, like because I really like getting to know the relationships between characters, sometimes it will like hit harder if I'm like watching someone go through something from like their best friend's perspective and I'm like, oh, like you're so right. This is devastating. And like we do feel it so deeply because like you feel it so deeply for this person. So I think that can be very fun. And then also like there's also a lot of like small moments that I really enjoyed writing where Seba is specifically him, sometimes Jas, but mostly Seba is reacting to something Adelina has said. And because Adelina is crazy and she's just like kind of a delusional person, in some ways, like he can stand in maybe for like the reader at points of being like, no, this is a wild thing that she just said, especially, she's a 17-year-old girl wandering around. Like, why is she saying these things? And like, so it's kind of fun to then have those multiple points of view where you can have someone, especially like Seba, where like Jas maybe wouldn't say it or like he wouldn't think it as much, but like Seba's just like, wow, she's crazy. Like, that's a wild thing to say.
She's intense. Yeah.
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 Yeah. That's fun. Yeah.
I also love that it allows you like very early on to for the reader to see like all these different truly points of view because we get introduced to Adelina first and she's a very privileged individual in this society and then we get to see the like other end of the like socioeconomic spectrum in this country through Seba and Jas and like different amounts of belief in this ocean goddess even like sometimes they don't know what each other believes in and seeing the characters navigate how they move through the social strata is nuanced and wonderful to experience as a reader. Speaking of the world and the writing, there are so many Easter eggs for fans of Shakespeare's Macbeth within your story, from echoes of direct quotes to I think some more subtle nods. Is there any Easter egg that you are particularly proud to have hidden for readers? And if you don't want to reveal exactly what it is, but want to share like about where it happens, feel free. But is there like one that you're like, this made it in and I'm so stoked?
Ooh, I mean, the fun part about like writing a retelling is that like it does get exciting. You can like either like get to like kind of recreate a scene or rethink a scene or like rethink quotes in certain ways. So like a lot of the ones that I was excited about were things that like from my 10th grade English class that we would like really analyze. I was like, this is for all those people in that class. Like, so yeah, there's a lot of those. There's a specific this one's kind of a spoiler one, so then I'll give an actual one that I can talk about. But there's a specific interaction between Seba and Jas that I'm really glad like made it in. Yeah.
Okay.
It happens on a beach. I believe it ended up being like pretty much a direct quote of like the interaction that kind of gives, if people really know Macbeth, they kind of know exactly what's about to happen after.
Mm-hmm.
And which might have been too much to say, actually, now that I've said that. Yeah, because another one that I just think is funny is that, like, in the original play, Macbeth writes a letter to Lady Macbeth, basically being like, oh my gosh, the witches, they just like told me that, I'm going to be all these things. And so she's reading the letter, and part of this letter is he addresses her as my dearest partner of greatness. And I was like, that's actually hilarious. So I was very glad to like put that in and have that be something that Sebo says to Adelina, because also I think it kind of works with his character. He's like, yeah, no, this is what I'm going to call you now. Yeah, and then one more. One that I can maybe expand on more because it is the first chapter. There's a line in Macbeth, and it's like Act 2, Scene 2, where like Lady Macbeth, it's when the murder of Duncan is happening, and Lady Macbeth is waiting for Macbeth to have finished this murder. And she says, had he not resembled my father as he slept, I had done it. I think people read in a lot of different ways, but like for me, I'm like, oh, well, it's like kind of like her maybe like admitting that she didn't really want to kill someone. Because she's like, no, he just like looked like my dad, guys. If he didn't look like my dad, I would have killed a man just then. Which I also think is just a funny thing to be like, don't worry, guys. But then also in addition to that, there is like there's some kind of moral there. There's some kind of like inner guilt or questioning or just like something in that line. So I thought it was a very interesting line. And then I'm not sure what came first, but the way that I guess Adelina and her family are set up is that like her family, their last name is literally Ducansa, so it's Duncan. And so it does end up in that very first chapter, it does end up being her father that she is trying to kill and then decides not to. And it's like for another reason, like she has like her reasons for not doing it, but kind of in the same way of like in Macbeth, like, do we really believe Lady Macbeth when she's like, oh, it's just because he looked like my dad, but I would have killed a man? This version of Adelina of like, oh, well, he is my dad and I was going to kill him, but there's this other reason and that's why I didn't do it. Like, I definitely would have. Don't worry, everyone. I would have. So I just think that that's a very interesting dynamic and then have that line essentially be the first chapter.
I love that you gave 3 spoilers and each one was like one for each point of view character. You did. Yeah. That's the end of our prepared questions, but I do want Courtney to ask the question that she asked before we started recording.
Oh, yeah. The fact that you took this quarantine project and you published it. It's such an exciting feat. Congratulations. And while you were writing your debut novel, you were/are in school. Can you tell us a little bit more about what it's like being a student who's also writing a debut novel?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people, when they are writing their debut, they're often doing other things because the whole thing of a debut is you're not getting any money from it. And often even like when, not to get into a whole spiel, but even when you do like get money, it's not that much. So yeah, so often when people are like writing their debuts, they have something else going on. And for me, that was being a student. And, I think that comes with its own specific things of like your schedule kind of changes every like 4 months, which like for me wasn't the greatest in terms of like having like a steady kind of writing routine. So there were like some semesters where I would write a ton and then some semesters where I wouldn't write at all. And I was able to have that leeway because it was my debut, because I didn't have an agent, I didn't have a publisher, like I was not on a schedule. So like in that way, it worked out. And then also because I was studying international affairs and I also like I did a minor in English and I took like a horror fiction class. So there are some like elements in this book that are kind of traditionally horror tropes. Part of the maybe what's good about being a student while also writing is that like you are getting like there's just so much information that you're getting and so much like inspiration in a way. And part of it is what I was studying is that I was studying, international affairs comes with its own stories and ideas and like ways of understanding the world. And then also with a minor in English. So there was like very direct application. So I think there is like so much about like being a student that you can bring into writing. And then also if you're not on a deadline, it kind of works out. So I had the idea COVID summer, the summer for me in between high school and college. And so I started writing probably that winter, maybe like December-ish, and then signed with my agent like at the beginning of my senior year of college. And then so I went straight from doing my bachelor's to doing my master's. So got the book deal at the beginning of my master's degree. And so that one was a bit more complicated because then like there are deadlines involved, there are other people involved, and starting a master's degree is a lot. And it's not something that I like necessarily planned because you never know when you're going to get a book deal. So I was like, oh, I guess I'm doing all of it now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then also like I was lucky enough to have a 2-book deal because this is a duology and I think it's very well set up to be a duology and I planned it to be a duology. So I'm very lucky that like the publisher saw that and yeah, gave me a 2-book deal. But it did mean that I was then on deadline for the next one. I essentially wrote book 2 like over the past 4 or 5 months. So which I just turned in. So now we're like getting into another school year of I think maybe a similar thing. It does get stressful.
Yeah, a lot on your plate, but congratulations on like the release. Congratulations on the second book deal.
Thank you.
That's so exciting. And like how cool that like here's your book that was your COVID project and that we get to share it here on what was our COVID project.
COVID projects coming together.
Yes. Yeah.
COVID projects coming together. Thank you so much for sharing your book with us and with our listeners and for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a very fun conversation.
Yeah, we'll see you for the second book.
Thank you for listening.
I'm Courtney Smith.
And I'm Elise Sharp.
This is Shakespeare, anyone?
Thank you so much for listening to Shakespeare, anyone. Works referenced in this episode are available in the episode description. Our theme music is Never Ending Minute by Sounds Like Sander.
If you would like to support us, visit shakespeareanyone.com/support or check out the links in our episode description. You can also hit the subscribe button, like us, leave a comment, write a review, share us on social media, tell a friend about us, all the things. We'd appreciate it. For more, you can visit our website, shakespeareanyone.com, or follow us on Instagram at shakespeareanyonepod.
Now, because you listened all the way to the end of the credits, here is a completely random Shakespeare quote for you.
This is from Macbeth, Act 4, Scene 2, said by Lady Macduff. I am in this earthly world, where to do harm is often laudable, to do good sometime accounted dangerous folly. Why then, alas, do I put up that womanly defense to say I have done no harm?
Since 2011, American Giant has been making everyday clothing with extraordinary effort. Not in far-off factories, but right here in the USA. We obsess over fabrics, fit, and details, because if you're going to wear it every day, it should feel great and last for years. From the cut of a hoodie to the finishing of a seam, nothing is overlooked. Our supply chain is tight-knit and local, which means less crisscrossing the country and more care in every step. The result is durable clothing, t-shirts, hoodies, sweatpants, and denim that become part of your life season after season. This isn't fast fashion, it's clothing made with purpose by people who care as much about how it's made as how it fits. Get 20% off your first order with code STAPLE20 at American-Giant.com. That's 20% off your first order at American-Giant.com with code STAPLE20.